My name's Lucas. I'm going to present to you today the webinar regarding how to use tools on Beas Manufacturing. So let me just give you a brief overview about tools first. To open up the menu to manage and to create new tools, you have to come here into administration, setup, inventory, and in here you have the tool administration feature. And here in the tool administrator, the first thing that you have is two tabs, one for tools and another one for utilities. The main difference behind them is that for the tools, you can control the cost and you can make the tools to define your production lead times and influence the times that it will take for you to produce an item. And utility, on the other hand, is just informative. And utilities are mostly used when you want to link tools to quality control inspection plans to determine what are the kind of tools that must be used by the persons that are inspecting the products. So here to create a new tool, you can click on new, and then you can start creating your own new tool. The type is fixed according to the tab that you select. So I have selected tool. If I selected utility, I click here on new, and then I have the type utility. You see that when I'm using utilities, I do have much less tabs in here than I do when I create a tool. So creating a new tool, you can see that I do have much more tabs in here. Okay, so the main difference is that utilities are only for information and tools can have costs and can affect the production scheduling and the production times. So let me just open up a tool that I have in here to show you how you can add the information here to your tool. The first thing that we do is to create a code for the tool here in the field called tool, and then we add a description for it. Then we can set if this tool is active or not, or we can block the availability of the tool after a certain date. So here we can set from which date the tool will have its availability blocked. Here in the General tab, we have a lot of fields that are only for information, but we do have some very important fields as well. For example, drawing number and type are only for information. In here, you can link a drawing number to your tool. You can type in the type of your tool. You can also select if this tool belongs to a customer or to a supplier. So, for example, if a customer has sent a tool for you to perform extrusion of steels, you can then create a tool and link this tool to the customer, and you know that this tool belongs to that customer. The same thing if you want to control, for example, tools that you have sent to suppliers. So you can create your tools and set that it is in a specific supplier. But this is also just for information. And if this tool belongs to a specific project, you can also link the project in here. This is also only for information. Okay. Then we have one more information here, that is the warehouse. If you want to set up if that this tool belongs to a specific warehouse, you can set up the warehouse here. And if the warehouse has bin locations, you can select the bin location here. Those two fields are also only for information. Now we have a field in here that is indeed very important. That is a quantity of tools. In here you can set up how much units you have from this same tool. But if you want this tool to be valid for capacity planning, for you to view in APS and consider this tool as a production constraint, then you need to set the amount of tools as 1. If you do set a quantity of tools higher than 1, then you cannot set this tool to be valid for capacity planning, and you don't have here the tabs that in which you can set up how it will be considered in the capacity planning. If you set it as 1, then you can see that you do have now the field for making it valid for capacity planning. And activating this field, I have 2 more tabs in here for scheduling and then graphic. Now in here we have the use factor. The use factor is related to the cases in which you have to generate more than 1 item when you produce using this tool. And this is mostly related to, for example, injection modes. When you use injection molds, you can have a distinct number of cavities in your mold that will in the end determine how many items you produce per usage of the tool and the time that it will take for you to produce the order. Because of course the total production time will be different when you use an injection mold that has only one cavity than when you use an injection mold with 10 or 15 or 50 cavities. And the amount of usage factor you set in here can change the time in your production operations if you set that the tool should define the lead time. And this is the other setting that we have in here. So tools define lead time means that the production time will not be defined by the time that you set in the operation. Instead, it will be defined by the tool and the time setup that you do on the tool when you link the tool to an operation. If you change the use factor in here and you want this to be applied to all the operations that have this tool, you just have to change the use factor and click here in this option to change. You click here in this icon in here to change the use factors in all the operations that use this tool. If you want to know what are the operations that are using this tool, you can also click here in reference. When you do that, you can see all the items that have this tool linked to its routing and also the work orders that contains this tool. Now, besides defining the lead time, we also have another option that is selectable at time receipt. This means that when you create a time receipt, you can have a tool linked to that time receipt. And by doing that, you can also have your tool affecting the cost of that time receipt. And in here, we also have a field called remarks in which we can add some comments to this tool. Now, moving to the next tab, we have the tab called scheduling. We can activate to view this tool in APS. And when we activate this, we can see in the operation schedule for that tool, we can see the tool that we are currently using on that operation. And here in graphic, after we have the production schedule for the tool, we can see how much we are using of this tool day by day. And this is linked to the capacity that we have on the resources linked to the operation that contains this specific tool. Here in cost, we have some very important definitions related to the way that you are going to add costs to the operations that uses this tool. The first thing that we do is set up a purchase price. This is what is the most important thing for calculating, let's say, the depreciation costs of this tool. The configurations that we have above here are only for information. This is the date that you have purchased the tool, the supplier of that tool, and also the manufacturer of this tool. Then if we do set up a purchase price and we want this purchase price to be considered in the costing calculation of a product, we need to set up a cost element that will contain the rules for accounting this value in the cost of the product. And we have to define here in setup production cost elements, we have to define the cost elements that we are going to use for calculating the cost of tools. Here I have all my cost elements, and you can see in here that I have one for relating to the purchase cost of tools and another one for relating to the maintenance cost of the tools. If I open up my tool purchase cost element, I can see it set up in here. And opening up the tool maintenance cost element, I can see it set up in here. You see that it's empty. It's not a problem to leave it empty as long as you define the accounts in the cost schema. But you could also set up the accounts in here if you wish. So the other setting that we can do for setting up accounts to the cost elements is to come here into the pre-calculation, the calculation schema. And then in here, we can add lines to our calculation schema, link those lines to our tools cost elements. So here I have one line for tool depreciation. I have set it up to my tool cost element, and then I set up here the account in which I want to book the value. The same for registering the maintenance cost of the tools, and I have linked this to my second tools cost element, and set up the account in here. So you could either set up the account in the cost element itself or in the calculation schema. Now coming back here into the tool, this is where I define what is the cost element I'm going to use to register the costs related to the depreciation of the tool. And in here, I set up the cost element that I'm going to relate to the maintenance cost of the tools. And the way that I'm going to calculate the depreciation and the maintenance could be defined in this specific field, and I can set it to be calculated based on the quantities that the tool is producing or based on the production times. If I set it up as quantity, I can see in here that my tool lifetime will be defined in units. And my maintenance costs will also be defined by units. So basically, I do have a tool that costs me 15,000, and this tool have a lifetime of 500,000, and I do have an additional maintenance cost of 300 per each 15,000 units produced. If I change to time, you can see that my lifetime for this tool will be defined in hours. So I have here product life in hours, and I have to set up here the amount of production hours that my tool will last. And the cost that will be calculated for each production will be based on the calculation of the purchase price divided by the lifetime in hours or in quantities. If I set it up as time, then my maintenance costs will also be defined by time. I can set it up in here. If my cost will be defined per hour or minute, and then define the cost per each hour or per each minute of tool usage. So in this example, I have set it up as quantity. Then I have in here my lifetime in quantity and my maintenance times in quantity. Here we can add some remarks explaining why you have considered this cost, and you have this tab here called variation cost. This is only for information, but in here you can add, let's say, some justifications for why the two costs have changed or have been defined in that way. You can click in here, you can say that you had to do maintenance, or what are the maintenance materials you consider when defining the maintenance cost of the tools. So I can say here that it's maintenance costs, including oil and sharpening. And this is the amount of costs that I have in here. And you can also type in what's originating this specific cost variation. Okay, you can add more lines in here if you wish, and this is just for information. Now we have another tab in here that is bill of materials. This is not an actual bill of materials, but instead it's like a bill of tools. Instead of adding the materials that compose this tool, you can add tools that are related to this specific tool. It's like creating a group of tools. So the tool that we have here at the top of the screen will be the grouping tool, and the tools that we add here inside the bill of materials are the tools that are somehow linked to it. And I can say that I have several tools that I need to use alongside my main tool. However, these bill of materials of tools are not considered by costing calculations. So you can have 10 tools in here, but the cost that the system will consider is only the cost defined in here, not the cost set to the tools inside the bill of materials. Okay, so the bill of materials itself is also only for information. In here we have another tab that is interruption tab. Let me just open another tool in here that for which I have interruptions. Okay, if you do have any interruptions created for the tool, you can see it in here. It's the same information you can have for the resources, so you can see all the past interruptions and also the active interruptions or the planned interruptions. You could create interruptions from here by clicking on new. You can start a new interruption, or you could also create the interruptions from the terminal. In the terminals, you have the buttons login, log off interruptions, and this can trigger your interruptions as well. Besides that, tools are also integrated into the maintenance module, and the maintenance orders could also trigger interruptions for the tools. So if I click here in maintenance orders, I can see all the maintenance orders I have for my tool, and you can set up maintenance scenarios for the tool by coming here into the maintenance module. In here I have this example that I have linked to the tool that we are seeing right now. You can create your maintenance scenario linked to a tool, select the tool in here, and then create the maintenance plans for that tool. You can set up here the maintenance calendar for the tool in the scheduling. You can set up what are the materials you're going to use for the maintenance, how you want the interruptions to be created. And here you can see all the maintenance that you have created for this plan inside the scenario for that tool. And then when you come inside the tool, you can also check up all the maintenances already performed or planned for that specific tool. Here on the attachments, you can link images or documents to your tool. And here in documents, you could also attach new documents to your tool and also set up the versions of the documents. Now let's see how we can add this tool to a routing, and how, if we do have this option in here to define the lead time, how this affects the time of the production. So I have one work order in here that I'm going to use as an example to show this to you. The work order I have is for this item that is a plastic tote with a red lid. I have two subassemblies in this production. I have one make-to-order subassembly that is a red plastic lid, and I have another subassembly that is a make-to-stock subassembly that is a plastic tote. If I open up each one of the subassemblies, I can see that they are both injected. So I have injection operations for the red plastic lid, and I do also have injection operations for the plastic tote. Let me just open up the order in here. Just a second. Okay, so if I come here, I can see that I also have injection operations for the plastic tote. Now, if I open up my operations, I can see that I have tools linked to them. And this tool that is highlighted in green is the tool that is currently active. If you look at the tools, you can see that if you see the planned times, we have different planned times for each one of the tools. This is based on the number of cavities I have for each one of the tool. So if I inject the red plastic lid using my 20 cavities tool, the time will be 775 minutes. If I do the same using my 25 cavities tool, then my production time will be 625 minutes. If I inject the plastic tote using each one of these tools in here, you can see the differences that we have in the production times. Now, the way that we can set this up, let me just open up the item master data. Is by coming here into the items routing, into the operation that we want to link the tool, like in this case, the injection operation, and come here into the tab called Tools. In here, we can click in New to link new tools to this specific operation. So in here, we select the tool that we want to add. Here we have the main informations for that tool. We have drawing number and an information that is a general comment. And in here we have two user definable fields that you can activate in the configuration wizard. And here in the fold time, we have the use factor that comes from the tool master data, and we have to set up the production times for that tool. Here we set up our setup time, for example, 25 minutes, the processing time, and the amount of units we process in that specific time. And in here we set up how we want that time to be defined, hours or minutes, or following the operation default. If you want to control your production times using, for example, the injection cycles, let's say that you generate, that you have one injection cycle per minute. I have the same setup in here. You can say that your processing time is 1 minute and you generate 1 unit of product. 1 unit that is actually not 1 unit. This is your, let's say, 1 injection cycle. And the amount of units that you produce are set up in here, 20 units. So in this case, I have a setup of 25 minutes for using this tool. then my injection cycle lasts 1 minute, and in 1 minute I produce 20 units using this tool with 20 cavities. If I use my tool with 25 cavities, then I can see that I have the same time for the injection cycle, the same setup time, but instead I have a use factor of 25. It means that I'm going to have an output of 25 produced units when I use this tool. Then when you set up the operation like this and you come here into a work order that you have created with that setup, you can see that the times are different. And since I have selected that I want the tool to define the lead time, when I select a tool, my operation time changes according to my tool selection. The same if I change the tool for this second item, that is the plastic tote. If I select a tool with 40 cavities, then I have only 400 minutes of operation. And if I do select a tool with 10 cavities, then my production time will be 1525 minutes. Okay, this is also interesting when you want to calculate the cost of producing an item with one or the other tool. If you come into the item master data and you run a calculation just to see what are the most interesting tools to use in production, you can check in here that you have an injection operation. This is the cost that you have for that operation, and you can see the cost that you would have by using each one of those tools. So this is the cost using this specific tool. But the costs here, the time is different. The time, I'm seeing the time for only 1 unit. You are seeing 25.10, 25.4, because 25 is my setup time, and this is fixed. And the dot is actually the time that it takes for me to produce 1 unit of product. If I change the view to, let's say, 100, then those times will change. And you can see here the times estimated for using each one of those tools. If you activate another tool, then you could see the variance in cost for using that specific tool. So let's say that I do come here in that operation, and I want to know what will be my costs when I use the tool with 10 cavities. I can just activate the tool in here. I can edit this and set this tool as active. It will give me an error because when the tools define lead time, you cannot have more than one active tool. So I just have to come in here and inactivate this tool and then activate the tool that I want. And I can just rerun the calculation to check what are my times and costs when using this specific tool now. So now this is the time and cost that I'll have when using this specific 10 cavities tool. And the tool that I set as active is the standard tool that will be set to the work order in the moment that I create the order. You could change it later, but all the orders that you create for this item will be set to the currently active tool. Now, if you have set to see that tool in your Gantt chart in APS, it will mean that when you run the APS calculation, let me open up APS. Let me run only for a few orders. I'll run for these orders that I have just selected. Let me uncheck those orders and run for the orders that I have not selected. Okay, I'll start the calculation for those orders in here. Now I'll open the Gantt chart. And when I click on the injection operations and I click to view the resources, I can see what is the tool that I'm using in that specific operation. And if I do have operations in which I can use more tools, like the one for producing the plastic tote, I can see all the tools that I have and the tool that I am using in this specific operation. If I have more production scheduled for the same tools, I could also see them here in the Gantt chart. If you want to change the tool that you are currently using, you could click here in operation, click here to open up the operation. Oh, sorry, I clicked on the wrong button. Let me just come here into assembly and click on this icon in here to view the graphical view of the structural view of the work order. And then you can come in here and change the tool that you are currently using to this one. Now I have changed the tool, and for this to be considered by APS and also to reprogram the production, because the production times when using one or another tool are different, you just have to run the APS calculation again. So let me close the Gantt chart, rerun the calculation, and then, oh, it's finishing, okay. Then when I open the Gantt chart, I can see my new schedule times for that operation and see the tool that I am currently using, the tool with 40 cavities. So you can see that the time had reduced because I increased my efficiency. And in here I can see more operations that I have for the same resource, it is the injection machine. And if I am using one of those tools in here, I could see them as well. But in this case, I'm not. Let me just come here. Okay, so this is a case in which I can see that I'm using the same resource with two different tools at different times. So this is what I have scheduled for my tool with 20 cavities, and my currently selected operation is set to my tool with 25 cavities. So when you set up to be able to see the tools in the Gantt chart, this is what you get when you open the Gantt chart after the APS calculation. And one additional important thing is the effects that the tools can cause in the item's valuation after you finish the production. So here I have the production order. I have two operations. I'm going to open up my first operation and copy the barcode. So here I have the operation. I'll come here into extended, copy the barcode. Now come into the terminal, log in into my operation, then log off. I'll complete it. It doesn't have a tool, but it requires some materials. Let me consume the materials. Okay, now let me start my last operation, that is the injection operation. I'll come here into the extended tab to copy the barcode. I'll start it, then I'll finish it. It has a tool linked to it. I'll complete. Generating a production scrap for me. Now, after receiving the assembly, this screen popped up because I had some quality control checks linked to my injection operation. I have linked here inside my injection operation a quality control inspection plan. Here it is. This is an inspection plan linked to time. It means that after a certain time of operation, I have to go to the resource and check some parameters. These parameters are, in this example, humidity and temperature in Celsius degrees. This helps by keeping track of how the operation is going on. I have a maximum humidity indicator that I need to measure, and then an optimum operation temperature. I'll just update. Okay. And then when I refresh the operation here in SAP, and come into the production position to check its journal. As I have set the cost elements for registering the tools cost, you can see that I have a depreciation cost and a maintenance cost in here. If I come here into calculation, I can see that is exactly what has been calculated for my tools. In here. So the system will take up the costs that you add to your tools, calculate the representativity of this cost according to the quantities that you are producing, and then creates the journal entry according to the setup that you have done for those cost elements directly in the cost element or in the calculation schema.